really what we want to hear is a couple of different things. You know, one, what is one thing you think the town is doing well that needs to be reiterated in the plan, or continued or supported more so than it is currently in town or around town? And then two, if you can't think of one thing that things are going well, then what is your top priority issue that should be addressed in the plan? And for this, the priority issues, think short term and long term, and the topic areas that we're likely to cover in the plan are land use and housing, so growth and development. What do you like about growth and development? What don't you like about what you see around town in terms of growth and development? What kinds of growth and development do you think are needed and where? Or what do you want to see downtown? What are your transportation and infrastructure priorities? Or how can we support economic development in Highlands and support tourism, outdoor recreation, parks, natural and cultural resources? So feel free to kind of enter any questions you have and or comments related to these questions in the chat box, and we can kind of pause and see what we get.
We have a hand raised.
Okay. Okay. How do I?
Go to attendees. And it's Hank Ross.
Wow, we got a lot of people.
Maybe it timed out, but Hank, if you can raise your hand again, we can answer it.
Yeah, and I can actually allow people to talk. If somebody wants to say something, I can. Yeah.
I think he'd like to talk.
Okay, Hank, you're on.
Yeah.
Did I mute you again? Sorry. Try again.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I think you got me now. Yeah, you know, I raised my hand by mistake, but I would like to make a comment. Dinah has been asking some questions about, you know, bicycling and such, and I have some particular concerns about that too. And I think that's a really important topic that I hope you all can address. You know, we have this great greenway, but it doesn't really lend itself for you know, any kind of mode of transportation besides, you know, walking and hiking and that sort of thing. And it sure would be nice to have a way to get around safely when you're not in a car on the main access highways.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of any particular roads that are especially in need of some?
Well, I actually live on the Gorge Road, and I see people walking and bicycling every day, just about, and it's just, I mean, it's sad and frightening, as Dinah said, to see that, and you know, and over the years, there's always been discussion. Well, maybe DOT can put a sidewalk in. Well, you know, it's kind of it's always dismissed because, you know, it's expensive and DOT is not so responsive. Kind of thing, and so anyway, it's really something I would like to see. But any of the main access highways is really where you see it, and people ride. You see groups of bicyclists coming up the Gorge Road, you know, from Franklin, and it's, you know, it's pretty scary with some of these curves we have, blind curves and that sort of thing, and in 106 as well, and just all the main 28, all the main roads coming in need addressed somehow. They just need to be wider. It would help a lot. So, so yeah, anyway, I wanted to comment on that.
Well, thank you, Hank. That dovetails with some of the stuff that we've heard. I know town staff is concerned about sidewalks on a few of those routes, but the same could be said about biking. Okay.
Road washout, narrow roads. So we're hearing that a lot.
Sidewalks on Highlands and Dillard Road, Nancy says, so hear that. Okay, anybody else want to talk, or feel free to just submit more things in the chat, but if you wanted to talk, you can raise your hand and should be able to acknowledge you and let it sort of you can talk too.
So, Jake, do you want to explain how to do that for folks who maybe aren't familiar?
Yes. So once you access it, it should be right near the chat. You should be able to raise your hand or click the chat box. Let's see if I can. Yeah, right down at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to go down to the bottom, and there's a chat, and then a raise your hand function there, where you can do Q&A.
We did just get a question, has the town explored how they want to shape a municipal block behind town hall and the fire station?
Yeah, so the fire station is moving to the north side of town, and there's been some discussion about, you know, what happens in the old fire station. I think that county is going to remain there, but there's a building that is currently the old fire station, and I think the town's thinking about that. I don't think there's been any decision made about what to do about that, but that's something that we're going to be looking at during the process. If you have any ideas, then let us know. Michael, can you describe where the new fire station is going?
Yeah, so as many of you know, the fire station is going to be along Franklin Road, right across where the post office is. I know Josh actually met out there with some people from the Army Corps and North Carolina Water Quality about some things today, so that project's moving along.
Dina says Charleston has story parking with bathrooms, so that's an idea.
We've heard a lot about parking downtown.
Yeah, and you know, that's something that, you know, we're going to be also working with downtown businesses. We're going to have a downtown business survey that just talks about what business owners' concerns are in and around downtown, and you know, parking will be, you know, part of this plan. So understanding that, you know, that's needed for businesses, and you know, is a parking deck in the future of the town? I'm not sure, but the town has done a lot to improve streets adjacent to the downtown, and you know, if you think about Spring Street and Oak Street and others, the town has gone in there and added parallel parking or angled parking in a lot of cases. So they are working on expanding parking, but you know, it's always, you know, you're kind of chasing a moving target though, because you know, you can never have enough parking. But we also don't want our downtown just to be parking either, so it's a balance.
So Jake, I think maybe Allison, you're going to talk about James's comment. And I don't know, he actually sent in a separate question in the question and answer box. So he asked if you were concerned that the input that you're gathering is after probably over half of the citizenry has left for the winter. Should there be an effort to reach them to ensure they are engaged? So maybe y'all can just touch base on that a little bit.
Hey,
Yeah,
Jake, sorry. Before that, I wanted to address Nancy's question about the buildings. I'm talking about Franklin Road across from the post office that adjoins, there's a vacant lot that adjoins the old PNC Bank out there. That is where the new fire department's going to be built. Go ahead, Jake. I just wanted to clarify that.
So James asked, are we concerned that the input we're getting is after a lot of folks have left for the winter?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's one reason why we wanted to start this process and have the stakeholder meetings and an opportunity for a public meeting in October before some folks left. But we're also trying to do the best we can to reach out to folks in a lot of different mediums, you know, through the paper and radio, but also through the Chamber of Commerce website and other avenues that hopefully will capture folks. You know, even if they're remote, they're aware of what's going on in the area. But if you have any additional ideas on how to reach those folks that may not be around for the next couple months, then feel free to submit those as ideas, because we're open to doing what needs to be done.
Well, and that was part of the reason we decided to do an online meeting too, because we figured, you know, folks didn't actually have to be in Highlands right now to attend this.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we hope that some of the folks who have left for the winter are on this evening.
Mm-hmm. We have a question about 64. And could highway traffic on 64 be rerouted around downtown? That was the question. And I know that, you know, that's something that the town had looked at a number of years ago. And they looked at routing it on 3rd, I believe, around town, and the town board didn't want to do it. They voted against it back a couple years ago for a number of reasons. But it is something that we need to look at. It needs to be part of the conversation, and it's really related to some of these intersections. There's only so many improvements you can do to that main intersection of Main and 4th if truck traffic is going through there, because you have to have a certain radius of the curve for those trucks to get through there and not get stuck or hit something. So it's really an issue that needs to be tackled in tandem with how do we make that intersection safer for, you know, people walking around. So I don't think that, you know, that is a final decision that was made a number of years ago to not reroute traffic. I think that that's something that should be on the table and it merits more discussion. And then Dina, you say something about golf carts, and she says West Palm Beach has a great service, 6 or 8-seater golf carts that go around town to pick up and drop off tourists. Tip jar in the cart, and it's provided by the Chamber of Commerce. So I think there's a couple of towns that I can think of that have that, and there's some towns that have really embraced golf carts even wider than you know, just one service. I think, you know, we're talking about transportation, we're talking about, you know, mobility, and how can we make it better for walking and biking around town? Is there some sort of kind of small transit service, and is that golf cart or what that can help people get around town a little bit better? So and how can you, if you do want golf carts, where would they park and that sort of thing? There's a number of things that we can talk about. What else we got, Allison?
Vi is talking about a solution for affordable housing to enable restaurant and hospitality workers to live closer to work. A lot of them cannot afford to live in the Highlands.
Yeah, so you know, affordable housing and workforce housing really is an issue that came up in a number of different stakeholder groups that we met with. We met with the director of the Highlands Captures Hospital, and that's something that he brought up. And it's hard for him to, you know, recruit and retain workforce. So that's something that it is an issue. Also, the short-term rentals is an issue because we heard that some people had, rented for years, something that was, near downtown, and, they could get to work really conveniently. But with the short-term rental market picking up so quickly, it's hard to keep those longer-term rentals for folks that work here. From a financial perspective, it's more attractive to rent it out as a short-term rental. So that's a concern. There's some things that the town can do from a policy perspective and even partnerships to try to encourage the private sector to build more workforce housing. And I make a distinction between affordable housing and workforce housing, because that's what you're looking for is workforce housing just for people that work in town, as opposed to very low income folks that just need housing. You don't have a lot of that sector, but you do need workforce housing. So there are a number of ways that the town can encourage the private sector to deliver that. There's maybe some partnerships that they can entertain and pursue that move the needle a little bit in other ways. But that's something that we do need to address in the plan. There's also, the idea of transit, not just around town, but off the mountain. That's something that was also brought up during the stakeholder interviews. If we can't provide housing here, then can we make it easier for folks that live off the mountain?
We have Slogan's question.
What's that?
We have
Okay.
questions about Sarah's welcome to address the concerns of homeowners in residential areas, and we also had a hand raised that we'll circle back around to.
Okay, great. So the question or comment was address the concerns of some homeowners in residential areas that are zoned non-business, that are zoned residential, about short-term rentals. There's currently no prohibition of short-term rentals in Highlands. The town doesn't have any prohibition or laws that regulate short-term rentals. There's a number of things that towns can do and cannot do related to short-term rentals. And we're going to be talking about the options during this process. One thing that the town could do is have certain zoning districts that prohibits short-term rentals, or specifies certain criteria for rentals, length of stay, a minimum length of stay, for instance, or something like that. But the town cannot have a lottery system and only have a certain number of short-term rentals and cap it at that. The city of Wilmington tried to do that, and they found that was illegal because you're given certain preference to certain folks and not others. But if the town were to establish a zoning district or multiple zoning districts, there will be some discussion needed on a neighborhood level, because if a majority of homeowners in a certain area really want short-term rentals, then it would be really hard for the town to say no, you can't have short-term rentals. On the flip side, if you have a neighborhood that most of the folks don't want short-term rentals, then that could be the town could do something and create a special zoning district that prohibits them or regulates them in some way. So those are some options on the table. We don't know the answer yet. I think we're just wanting to get more information on how people feel about short-term rentals. Do we love them? Do we hate them? And how to move forward. So that's some things that we're talking about.
Dennis, if you could raise your hand again in the window, we can answer you.
There he is. Okay, Dennis, you're this one? Okay, Dennis? I did. I think Dennis has to unmute himself and then he can talk. Right? Yeah. Dennis, feel free to try to unmute yourself. I'm clicking the ask to unmute button, so hopefully you're seeing.
There we go.
There you go.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a subject. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Having to do with safety to a certain extent. And it has to do with an area of town that has kind of exploded a bit. And that's over where Carolina Way is and Maple Street, which is really, Maple Street was actually created, used to be called Blackbelt. And as Maple Street, it became a bit of a bypass. But what happened is that Carolina Way got established once it got subdivided and various buildings were created. And what we've got that seems to have happened is a combination of 4 restaurants along that, well, yes, I guess it's 4 restaurants along that route. And I noticed it because my office happens to be on Carolina Way and actually live on Carolina Way too, in an apartment. And there's a lot of traffic that comes over from 5th Street down Carolina Way and then scooting across to the signal light to get on Maple Street to head that direction to another part of town. But we've noticed a transition of ownership, that is the Bank of America on a pretty large piece of property. And also the redevelopment of the property and a restaurants and businesses on 64 against and along with Carolina Way. And if you notice that when in the evening, well, during the daytime as well too, there's an abundance of parking that starts taking place. And it's taking place as well where the funeral home used to be, which is across from the Historical Society building and property. And it's amazing how much that fills up. It'd be, I think, worth discussion. I have no idea whether Bank of America still owns that property. I think it might, in fact, be one step back with the bank that was in there prior to the Bank of America that still owns the property. But some discussion about how that could be defined differently, which would afford some parking or a little bit more open space, or sort of create situations of more safe walking traffic along 64, along Carolina Way, and so on too. It's been kind of a shock over the last few months seeing how, and of course, seeing how much traffic and foot traffic, that is vehicular and foot traffic, has happened in that particular area. And I think it's created a safety issue.
Thanks, Dennis.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there definitely is a lot more activity in that area, and that's Carolina Way, and also Spruce Street is something.
Right, exactly.
And there's a couple potential solutions there. I mean, one is, what are the internal parking requirements on anything that happens along Carolina Way in terms of redevelopment? Is there an opportunity for some kind of parking structure on any of those properties long term? And then, what could be done on 64 to improve walking safety? And then what can be done on Spruce Street? And Spruce Street is one of those roads that the town has not improved yet, but it does have a significant amount of right-of-way that, could be, the town could go in there and add a sidewalk or add some parking to help alleviate some issues. There's some access issues that would need to be worked out because there's a lot of driveways there right next to 64. but that's something that we could certainly look at. So I appreciate that comment.
Yeah, it's kind of an important area. You also got their mountain findings as well too.
Mm-hmm.
Mountain findings have got a few parking spaces, but you'll find when they're not in operation now, for instance, closing down for the season, once night falls and people are at the restaurants, you look over there and the lower parking area next to Mill Creek is filled up, but also up into the old funeral home space that's available for parking. So I don't know whether, for instance, the old funeral home property, I don't know who owns it now, but if it might be available for purchase to help out as far as parking is concerned and relieve the pressure a little bit in that area. Maybe a consideration.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot spot that we need to kind of look at and the town could work on addressing. So thanks for that, Dennis.
Sure.
We have a question in the question box about the nature of short-term rentals, and they seem to fit all the qualifications of a business. Why are they allowed in residential areas?
Yeah, well, I mean, short-term rentals, keep in mind that there's been short-term rentals for a long time. But what we're seeing now with VRBO and Airbnb, it's not just a short-term rental. It's really it's a technology that has changed real estate and the way people view real estate. And really, in the last 3 years or so, it's really taken off. It's become a lot easier to put a place on Airbnb or VRBO, and it's easier for patrons to rent it out as well. So the short answer is a lot of short-term rentals have taken off in the last 3 years. This technology and this change in real estate has happened in the last 3 years, and frankly, a lot of towns are dealing with it, and a lot of them don't have any regulations because it's a fairly new phenomenon. I mean, really, it's something that's very new, and the town realizes it's an issue, and that's why they want us to talk about it during this plan and think about it. But that's the primary reason is it's kind of a new thing, and there's some different approaches, and the town hasn't yet taken a stance on how they want to address it. And that's what we're doing during this process, is going to be talking about it and coming up with options and talking with residents about it and trying to make some recommendations to the town on how they can move forward.
And just at the questions point, just in the brief research, this particular point has been brought up in state Supreme Court cases around the country, and opinion is divided. So it will be interesting to see if it ever comes to a head in North Carolina.
Yeah, but there are some tools that a town can do to one is just registering them is probably the first step, is understanding, okay, how many do we have, where are they, that sort of thing, understanding where the conflicts are, and then there's some different things that they can do in terms of establishing different zoning districts or changing zoning districts to say, in these zones we really don't want to have short-term rentals, or in these they're okay. Lots of things that they can do. Yeah, and it's actually it's a hard issue because, as Cheryl says, they bring in a lot of revenue to downtown and small businesses, and even a lot of people can afford to live part-time or half a year in Highlands, or afford a house that they and sometimes the short-term rentals help them afford to do that. So it's a complicated issue, and there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but it's something that we need to address. Okay, what else? Any other questions that we got? Yeah, modernizing our ordinance. So James said yes. I mean, there's definitely some modernization of our ordinances that we can do. And, you know, zoning ordinances and town ordinances aren't meant to be set in stone. You know, a lot of them were created a number of years ago, and things have changed. The issues that the town faces today are not the same as when those ordinances were enacted. And what the comprehensive plan does is it forces us to have conversations, think about, okay, what are we doing and how could we do it differently or better? And some of that is, you know, we can certainly do during this process.
I'm just gonna post the survey in the chat box again. If any of our attendees haven't taken the survey yet, feel free to send it along to any other residents you know, particularly seasonal ones. Marlene, if you have any friends, and we can spread it around. We've gotten a very good response already.
Dennis wanted to raise your hand again.
I didn't expect to be doing this, but something else has come up in regard to your subject, that I'm getting the impression that things are changing as to who is coming to Highlands from neighboring communities and making a decision that they're able to come to Highlands and potentially buy a home close to town or in town. They've got kids and they may like the idea of their kids going to K through 12 school in Highlands.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they've got broadband that's coming on in can accomplish their work because they've been doing it for the last 4 months or so,
Right. Yeah.
wherever they are. And maybe making the decision that this is a good place to live.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked to somebody from the school, and they said the school is more full than they've ever been. And they had to actually stop discretional transfers from other systems nearby because there's no room for the additional students.
That's what my understanding is too. My wife was a teacher for 35 years up here and substituting now. But it just seems like it's an intriguing thing, and it could be, you know, there's nothing that really beats the natural changes of things when they're a comfortable decision about new, younger families moving into the community and kind of enriching the general public that exists here.
It also sounded like the chamber and some of the local businesses are sort of, Old Edwards Inn included, are kind of strategically planning for to attract more younger folks in and folks with families. And Cheryl also just mentioned that she feels like there's a wave of folks coming in with children.
That's good and healthy for the community.
Yeah.
I've been through all the various changes from when we moved up here, moved family up here in 1973, when there was one signal light that blinked red and green. And it was definitely folks that came up here for a longer period of time. We're definitely easing into a much different dynamic. And those that have been suffering through the COVID crisis and all that might decide, you know, I don't need to be in the big city anymore. Our family doesn't. Let's find a place in Highlands.
Absolutely.
And you know, I think that's, you know, I think diversity of different ages and different family types, I mean, that's good. You know, I think that's really a good thing because, you know, you have such great quality life in Highlands and amenities, and sometimes I mean, you need some kids to enjoy that too.
Yeah, when we keep
So-
enlarging and providing more facilities, who would ever think that we'd have an enclosed swimming pool that you could use year-round in Highlands?
Mm.
Yes, maybe an ice rink just for the winter and all that, but you know, prior to that, you'd just kind of wait for the lakes to freeze and rent some skates and go out there and be on Lake Sequoia or Harris Lake. But the ability to have all the gym facilities and so on too in the Civic Center, thanks to the contributions of some important folks that have been in Highlands, that saw fit to really help out financially. So I just wanted to make.
Thank you, Dennis.
Uh-huh.
There's one more question from a little while ago that I think got lost in the chat box. Given the amount of infrastructure the town is responsible for, is there an analysis of the real estate tax per acre for downtown versus single-family home neighborhoods? And correct me if I'm wrong, but there is, I haven't seen that. Michael, does that exist currently?
What was that question again, Celia? I'm sorry.
The question is, given the amount of infrastructure the town is responsible for, is there an analysis of the real estate tax per acre for downtown versus single family home areas?
Not that I know of. You may reach out to Rebecca Shue, our finance director, to see if she's kept something on file for something like that, but not to my knowledge, no.
Well, I can speak generally to that. So, you know, this is something that is really interesting to do is look at the tax value and tax contributions of properties in different parts of town or different land uses, and we can run some numbers on the town of Highlands, but what we'll probably find is that the tax yield per acre is probably exponentially higher on the downtown properties than it is on the single family properties, particularly the larger lot single family properties kind of outside of town. That's what we see generally. And I don't think it would be any different in this, especially in older downtowns where you have smaller lots and the more building coverage on a property and more activity, you will see a greater return on investment. So if the town does put $1 into street improvements or improving water and sewer service to the downtown, they're going to get a higher return on investment from property taxes for that investment than if they were to spend that same dollar building water or sewer or something else to a more residential, lower density residential area. But that's something that we can look into. I mean, I think that the property values in downtown are very high and climbing, and that's probably like what we would find. We got recommendations for a Highlands bus service, so that's good. Thanks for that. All right. Well, anything else that folks want to contribute? Feel free. And The next slide, one thing that we want you to do, the to-dos, take the survey, comment on the interactive map, tell your friends about the plan and about the ways to contribute their thoughts and ideas. If you have questions, email or call Michael. We really appreciate you all taking the time out of your night and joining us. And yeah, so if there's not anything else, then we can kind of close. And like we said, this will be up on the website, and a lot of other opportunities to kind of comment along the way. This is kind of the initial phase of just gathering ideas and understanding issues and your priorities, and we'll kind of keep you all involved through the process and have some recommendations, and you can help shape those. All right.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, y'all can stop recording.